Hello everyone, welcome back to my Sling TSi build log. Today the propeller goes on, but before I could put it on, I had a few firewall-forward jobs to finish first. There's the cowling tip, the oil lines, the exhaust, and the air filter. I'll go through those quickly in this update. And first, the cowling tip. The gap to the prop flange was coming in about 4.8 millimeters, but the spec is 5. So to fix the gap, I built the back of the tip up with 4 layers of 6 mil fiberglass in TotalBoat epoxy. So that's about 1 millimeters. So I'd have materials to sand to the front to a clean 5, 80 grits to get close and 220 to finish. While I was in there, the brake reservoir on the firewall had a leak at the straight fitting. So I drew the fluid out with a syringe and put in a new spare. I glued the intercooler baffle gasket to the nakadot with a contact cement and cut and glue the heat shield material that protects the lower cowling from the exhaust heat. None of these are big jobs on their own. There are just a lot of them, and they all had to be done. Well, not necessarily before the propeller, but since I wanted to get as many tasks complete as possible before mounting the propeller, so I chose to just go through this small task. Now on the oil line, a lot of these connections are in tight spot. One fitting under the left side of the engine I couldn't reach until I took the exhaust pipe off of cylinder 2. So there are 2 M8 lock nuts and 2 M5 nuts holding the pipe on. So I removed those connectors and I made a connection, then put the exhaust back at a 10 and 12 Newton meters torque. And then on the exhaust clamp, so I had 2 problems. Number one, one of the nut holding a clamp stripped its thread as I tightened it. So I cut the bolt off with an angle grinder and put in a new hardware. On another, the clamp was just way too big for the pipe. The 2 ends touched each other before it was tight. So I had to ground some of the material off the clamp until it could close down. And in general, anywhere I have a line run near the exhaust, it gets heat sink. And anywhere it runs near an edge or a wire, it gets a standoff. And this is the oil canister. It's part of the 915's dry-sump system, where the oil sits in a separate tank instead of a crankcase. I tightened the connections that gets tightened now. There's the banjo bolt on the oil sump to 17 Newton meters, and the filter connections and the canister's oil outlet. 2 of the oil inlet on the canister and 1 banjo on the canister I left loose on purpose. Those stay open for oil purge. So it's the process to prime the system before first start. There's no point tightening them now just to open them up later. The rest of the final torque happens in one pass once everything is in its final spot. Then the air filter came next. I test fitted onto the turbofan with the clamp loose, and then I added the 2 air pressure sensors to the filter shell. But it's not finished. As it sits, the filter's angle doesn't quite align up with the intake duct on the cowling. So I need to rotate it down about 20 degrees. But the problem is when I do that, it runs into a rubber hose right next to it. So this is a problem that I kind of parked away, and I still need to figure out. I didn't want to force it and create a new problem. Now the propeller. It's an Airmaster. Most of the work is grease. About 80% of my time was spent to grease the blades and the hub. Airmaster's instruction call for Mobilgrease 28 on the hub and the blade. There are also other grease that's acceptable, but from the factory, they use Mobilgrease 28, so that's what I used. So I work them in before anything gets torqued. Then each blade goes onto the hub and gets torqued to 15 Newton meters. After torquing all 3 blades, I went through the validation process. outlined from the instruction manual. 2 of the 3 blades, 1 and 3, they set flush against the hub, and that's good. Blade 2 set about 1 millimeter proud. The Airmaster manual says that's out of spec, so it has to come back off. And so I took blade 2 off and cleaned the extra grease off with lint-free towels and reapplied grease one more time, then put them back on. The second time is set flush at the same 15 Newton meters torque. With all 3 blades flush and torqued, I put on the lock plate and safety wired the retaining screws. So that's it for the propellers, at least for now, before I go and fine tune the stop pitch. So that's the firewall-forward work wrapped up, and the propeller is on. The oil lines are routed and mostly torqued, with a few connections left open for the purge. The air filter still needs its 20-degree fix. Next up is sorting out that L filter, the oil purge and final torque, and getting towards attaching the wings. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.